Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love talking to creative people. I think what they do makes life bearable, and it's not always an easy road, so I love to lift them up when I can. Today, my guest is Margot Rose. She is a performer, a composer, a writer. She has a new musical about her life called Unconditional. It's about her family, and specifically about the most horrible thing I think that can happen to a parent, which is losing a child. She lost a daughter as a young adult, and it's about how you keep going. And it's beautifully told, artfully put together. She's got a backing band and some other performers with her, and it's just wonderful. So it's showing at the Skylight Theatre here in LA through March 9th, and hopefully maybe you'll have a life beyond that, because I think this show deserves to be seen by as many people as possible. Before we get to the interview, though, I want to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by me. Just once, I'd love to say Chevrolet, but it's not going to happen. Anyway, but there are ways you can support it if you enjoy it. You can go to my website, DennisAnyone.net. There's a virtual tip jar there. You can leave a virtual tip there, or you could do a thing called Buy Me a Coffee. I always get a kick out of that. It always makes my day when people do that. The other thing you can do is consider becoming a subscriber to DNR Studios. I'm part of a group of shows, fun, fabulous queer shows under the Derek and Romaine banner, and for a monthly fee, you get my show early, and you get all these other great shows too. So learn about that at dnrstudios.com. All right, enough of the plugs. Here now is my interview with Margot Rose. Joining me now from Los Angeles, it's Margot Rose, the star and the writer and the composer of Unconditional, a wonderful musical and an autobiographical story that I saw last week and I'm still thinking about. I'm very moved by it. So welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm really happy to be here. I've heard so much about you.
How do you describe the show to someone that hasn't seen it? If you just met them at Starbucks and they're like, "What's that?"
I've developed sort of words that I feel like encapsulate it. I think because I do think it's about these things. It's about connection and community. It's about loss and heartbreak. And it's about family, and it's about how we go on. It's about how we go on.
I think that's the thing that I was thinking about as I was watching it, because it's about your life. It's about your family.
It is.
You experience a devastating, almost unimaginable loss in, I think, around 2018. And,
yes,
and
November 2018.
And you talk about like how to go on. And I was watching it. This world right now feels a little bit like how to go on. It's not the same thing at all, but it is that thing of like, what do we do? And that's what I was thinking about. You know, you start early on in the piece, you vote in the midterms and the Democrats take back the House. And so there's that in there. And then we're like, okay, I guess the theme is that encapsulates is, how do you keep going when you don't know how to keep going? And when you don't know what to do. And I think that's what I was thinking about as I was watching it. And it was just very, you kind of move through time in different ways. It's not linear. And the music comes in and out, the songs, it's so artfully put together. You've done shows like this before, right? This is not.
Well, yes and no. I've never done anything exactly like this. I did one other solo show that there were great things in it, and it was also kind of a hot mess. It was something I'd been working on forever, and I did it at the Fringe Festival in 2017, just because I had to prove to myself I could actually get it up there after talking about it for 20 years. But I didn't have a real director. It was kind of a mess, but it was also great, and it was great that I did it for myself.
Right.
But it was nothing like this. And this, and before that, and I don't always hook this up, but of course it's a huge part of my history. I did a show many years ago with a wonderful team, a wonderful writer and composer named Gretchen Cryer and Nancy Ford, who wrote a number of shows, but the one I did was called I'm Getting My Act Together and Taking It on the Road.
Right.
And we did it. It was the first. It was the first thing I did in New York. I was in the original cast, and it's not a one-woman show, but it's very much about a one-woman developing a cabaret act and having a big fight with her manager about what she's doing and how she's being rather progressive about the whole thing.
Right.
So then I did that show in New York for a year and out here for a year. It got me started out here. So it's very much my history, even though I don't always hook it up.
Right.
And I'm so close to Gretchen. We actually did an early reading of this piece at her place in New York. So it's all hooked
It's all
together.
connected in a way.
It's all connected. But no, I've never done anything like this before. And to be honest, Dennis, I really still can't quite say how it happened, except that it was birthed and dragged along for 6 years. I mean, I knew I was going to do something like it within weeks after losing my daughter.
Yeah. Based on the synopsis and the way it was described to me, I thought this might be somebody reading from a notebook and then singing a song and then reading something else. It's very artfully put together. You knew those lines, the lighting cues, the band. Not only were they wonderful players, but they got the spirit of it.
Oh, they did.
There's a singer that works with you in it that sort of plays your daughter at parts. And I'm like, she feels like she was born to do this.
Exactly.
In this piece.
The same way.
Yeah,
I wept.
and
I wept the first time I heard her behind me. I wept. I mean, when we did a workshop at the Fountain Theatre last year, and it's more developed and different a little, and with more music than it was last year. But when I first heard, she was with us last year, and when I first heard her behind me singing, I was like, oh, and she's actually doesn't look like her, and she actually doesn't sound like her, but like my daughter, but she channels her in some remarkable way that
you feel it in the audience. You feel it in the audience.
Right.
It's quite powerful, and the connection with you two. And I sort of think there must have been times when you're doing this, when you're like, I need to take a moment. I'm a little overwhelmed, right? Is it a little?
Absolutely. Thank you for knowing that. There's no word I can find for it, Dennis, except it's surreal. It's just surreal to be telling that story about the hardest, most defining thing of my lifetime, because that's what it is.
Yes.
That not what I ever thought it might be, but, at the age that, whatever I was when that happened, 67, 68 years old, it is the defining moment of my life, my daughter, just as in my mid 40s already, suddenly having children.
Right.
When, I always loved them, but, as a gay woman coming up when I did, before it was going on that much in the 90s.
You were the L word before the L word, as you said.
Exactly.
You were the original Bet and Tina.
Yeah.
I know my L word. I know
there
my
you
L
go.
word.
Good
I
for
do.
You. Yes. I mean, seeing that, I had a friend in particular that I'd done Bluefish Cove with, of all things.
Of course you did. Yes, exactly.
Who used to say, "Oh, you're her," and
right.
We used to laugh about it. Back before I was sober and I was a little bit of a player and all that kind of business.
You had a little Shane in you. You were a little bit Shane.
I was a little Shaney. Yeah.
Oh, that is so good. That might be the headline of this episode. I always pull a quote. Fans of the L word know what that means. Yeah. Shane just drips with sex appeal. Everyone wants to be with Shane, but I don't know if she can commit. She's got.
No, I had a little Shane thing going.
I love it. What was the outfit? What was your Shane outfit? Is there a leather jacket involved?
Well, thank God it was. Thank God it was more early 80s than late 80s.
Yes.
Because I even have video of doing some sort of club gig I did that had lots of shoulders and I think a mullet. I mean,
that's another show. That's another show.
That's like. But when I first came out here, we all kind of dressed a little bit the way we do now. Yeah. Not balloony pants and stuff, but I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and I have I'll send it. I have a poster
I love it.
That I still have, that the great photographer who did our show did a set of me, and I used to do a club act after getting my act together once a week. And we did a big poster for it, and it's like Shane for days. I
love it. Shane for days. What was it like to be gay in LA and an artist and young and sexy?
It took me by surprise because I hadn't. I sort of came out, and it was like, whoa, when I got out here.
Yeah.
I was 30 before I really out. And it was a little scary. I was actually in the business.
Right, you were acting in television and pursuing all of that stuff. I was acting in
TV and film, and, I got cast in 48 Hours, and I remember being, like, are you okay if you play this part? She's a little bit like, maybe she's gay, or, and I'm like, well, I don't know.
I'll do my best.
I'll do my best. And meanwhile, I have this much younger girlfriend that's like, no, you can't come to the set. And,
Right. You're managing it. You're juggling it.
I was in, and I will tell you, I was in the closet for years. And what put me solidly out, never to go back, was knowing I was going to have kids.
Yeah.
Because no, I'm not going to tell them there's anything wrong with this, or that we have to hide this.
Right.
And fortunately, kind of all occurred at the right moment so that it didn't matter a whole lot. Yeah. I was at a point in my career where I was in my 40s, and it was, 1999 going into the 2000s. People just, it was like everybody was coming out, and,
right.
So, okay. But, it was scary at first. I mean, I had a mythical New York boyfriend.
Oh, mythical. What was his name? What was he like?
Well, I think he was a mix-up of the ones I'd actually had.
Right. Like
when I was in my early 20s, he was like, sometimes he was Danny, sometimes he was David, sometimes, he was dark and tall and handsome and, all that business. But yeah, he never made it for these, those weekends that he came to visit where few and far between.
You know what? He got a gig and sorry, he couldn't make it.
There he is. He's gone.
I know. So the way you tell your story is really interesting. You jump around in time and you sort of weave this tapestry that kind of, the way the information is doled out. How do you do that? Like, how do you write it on it? Is it Post-it notes? What's happening?
You mean how did I actually write it?
Yeah. Like, how did you figure out where you would go this way?
Yeah.
We're going to start with this and we're going to flash back to this and then we're going to go to this. It jumps around.
Yeah, it jumps around. It was, it took 6 years. I couldn't even tell you how many drafts I've written.
Yeah.
I had a lot of help from, in 2019, the first year I was working on it. And it was really back then it was just, stories and a couple of songs, and not even of the songs that are in it, just a couple,
right.
A little bit. And stories, because I'd already started writing a lot in the like 4 or 5 years before that. I'd started going to writers camp and studying at Esalen and studying with Cheryl Strayed and Samantha and wonderful people up there. And I'd gotten really bitten by the bug of wanting to. I had for years written songs, but really gotten bitten by the bug of essay writing, nonfiction writing. So I'd been writing stories. And I'd actually done a couple of stories. One story called Blue, which is the basis of the story in the play about the birth of the kids.
Right.
And it was in a memoir class with Samantha Dunn, a wonderful writer at UCLA Writers Extension. And and I started writing these nonfiction stories, and I wrote Blue and then did it at a couple of storytelling events.
Right.
And so there was already this, and then when the kids were about to turn 18, Will, they're both, Nora was a wonderful artist. Will was he said to me, Marm, for my birthday present, it was in August, right before they started college, would you write me a story?
Oh, wow.
I know, what a guy, right? And I started writing about Hesby Street because we were about to sell it.
Right, so the place where they grew up, the home.
Yeah, so I started writing.
They were born.
Yeah, they're twins. They were born in 1999, and my partner Pat and I raised them, and through thick and thin and challenges. But I mean, as I say in the show, any lesbians, parents love their kids, but man, when you know how hard it is, and when you have them later, I mean, it's a real formula to really know what you've got,
right?
And how lucky you are.
Right.
And we knew, because we worked to try to have them for over 4 years. When they came along and we got them finally, it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
And despite all the shit that happened, the one thing we always shared and still do is how much we adored those children, just adored them.
It comes across in the piece. It's beautiful. The loss happens in what year? 2018?
2018, November, the end of 2018, right after we close escrow on our home. I mean, the ironies are thick.
What was it like to start to write about it? Did you feel like it was helping you, or did you feel like you shouldn't be doing it?
When I talk about at the end of the play, when I say something about, I mean, for better or for worse, save a couple of tiny details, that play is pretty much like exactly what happened. When I say about a promise, Nora had several times in the the year or two before, when she was already a very mature, taking no prisoners kind of older teenager.
Right.
She'd busted me a couple of times. Still a teenager, not knowing how many traumas can hit you and how many things can stop you from doing the things you want to or should do. She turned around to me several times, one time in particular, and kind of repeated it another time. But one time in particular, we were just sitting at the kitchen table talking. I'd already moved out and I was back for us having dinner together one night. And she just said, Marm, you are more talented than all of us put together. You can do anything you want. What the fuck is the matter with you?
Wow, just like, she called you out for not creating, for not living up to your potential as an artist.
Yeah, she did. And it was like, it was both shocking in its hurtfulness and in its complimentariness.
Right. She thinks I'm talented. She thinks I'm really talented.
Yeah, she really, and she was wonderful. She would have changed the world. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
She was a triple threat.
Right.
And it started at UCLA musical theater. I mean, that's a hard joint to get into.
For sure.
Yeah. So here's the rest of the story.
Okay.
When we were at the hospital, so that happened, and it of course stuck with me. When we were at the hospital on the second night, I think, several of my friends and the director of Foundation School Community, a woman named Sherry Werner, who knew every child's full name and what their problems were, and knew us. We were very close to her. She was with us, and we were talking, and I was saying things like, I don't want to ever do anything else creatively. I'm not going to off myself. I have another kid. But basically I'm going to sit in the closet and wait for him to call, just like I can't imagine a life. And I had told them about Nora saying that to me. And then I had played them, she and two other friends of mine, I had played them, the last song Nora wrote, which was just would floor you. It was about Borderline and the fires. It was about, brilliant song. And, I was telling them all these things and all these little pieces of things, and Sherry turns to me. She's about 4'10".
Right.
She turns to me and she goes, "That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. You have to promise that girl that you will do what she wanted you to do.
Right.
That's how you go on." So it's Sherry's fault.
It's Sherry's fault. But that seed had been planted by Nora.
It was.
I mean, not even planted. It had been like hammered.
Yeah, thrown at me. And so I did, Dennis. I literally went in before the last time I talked to her and said goodbye. I literally went into her room by myself and said, honey, I just need to tell you this. I promise you. I promise you. I promise you I will dedicate myself to being the best me that I can be. And I will do everything I can to be the artist and the person that you saw that I could be. And, you know.
Are there times along the way in the process where you really feel her?
Oh, my God.
Like little things that are even a little eerie.
Oh, my God, yes. I didn't know that the song that Melina and I sing together pretty much at the end.
Yeah, and Melina is another performer on stage, kind of like a backup singer.
She's like a backup singer who kind of
who delivers
Nora.
lines as Nora at times throughout the show.
She's sort of, it sort of has evolved in such a way that she's just there to begin with, and then by the end of the show, it's very clear that that's who she represents is Nora.
Yeah, no, it's seamless.
Yeah, thanks. Great. But I didn't know that. I didn't know any of the songs would be. I mean, there are parts on the songs and harmonies now, but none of the songs were duets,
right?
And that song was not a duet. And you know, hand on heart, 3 a.m, I was playing it on my guitar, and it was just like, this is a duet.
This feeling came over you like this is a duet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was clear at that moment, as I am today, that it was Nora saying, Mom, Marm, duet.
Yeah. Your kids call you Marm, and you use it all the time, obviously, and in this conversation. And you explain where that comes from, but why don't you tell the listeners? Because I think it's a great little story. And I think other people are going to steal it.
Yeah, they can, and they're welcome too. It's theirs. I give it away freely.
Right.
The mother in Little Women,
they
call her Marmy. They call her Marmy.
Right.
And I started out as Marmy, and then kind of it became Marm, and even their friends.
Right.
You know, in high school.
Because with two women, you have a Mom and Marm.
Yeah, Mom and a Marm, and I know other gay women couples that you know, one's mommy and one's mom, and you know, all this stuff. And so I was like, nah, I'll be Marm because it sounds like my name anyway.
Yeah, so it works out.
So I'm Marm, and it stuck.
Yeah.
You know, and Will sometimes, you know, strapping 25-year-old Will, her twin brother, who is by the way producing and is working with me on this.
Amazing.
I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wanted to know if he's seen it, if he's here, because he was in Texas in the story.
He's producing. He's being the producer. He's the producer. Yeah, me too. It was my secret way of getting to spend more time with him now that he's an adult. Hey, would you want to produce this? I'll pay you and everything. Come on, let's go. And he's like, yeah. And he's unbelievably supportive. He's a writer himself. Wants to be a writer and a director. Actually has a bang up job at Disney right now. Is working at Disney as the assistant to big time producers. So he's had a fabulous job for the last year, and he thought it was over. And we were like, okay, I'm going to hire you to do this, and then they hired him again. So he's like juggling.
He's doing good.
Yeah, because he's doing great.
He's funny in the piece because he becomes like sort of cowboy identified. Like he goes to school in Texas and he drives a truck, and you're like these two progressive lesbians going, what? We have Garth Brooks on our hands? What's happening?
And he's a joker. He's a rascal. He's a cut up. And still, I wouldn't say still because, you know, he went through a time, you know,
they were very
he's
close.
He's my hero. They were the loves of each other's lives. That's the truth. They adored each other. And he's really my hero, Dennis, because he had a dark time for sure. It wasn't easy, but he made a decision and has grabbed his life and is embracing it and out there. And before he graduated from college, I said to him, honey, because he was already, you know, just the last 2 years of college, he really did well and did lots of different kinds of things. And I said, honey, I don't know how you're doing this, you know, like, because having written this over 6 years, yes, but also, it's been hell.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, those two things went along together concurrently. There were times that I couldn't even, manage to think any words or anything, but thank God things are allowed to take a long time. It just did,
Yeah.
But anyway, Will, I said to him right before he graduated from college, I said, you're doing so well. I don't know how you do it. And he said, Marm, I'm living my life for two.
Wow. You know what that reminded me of? There was a musical about Elvis Presley in Vegas. And he was a twin, and his brother died. And I think that the thing that the play said was that he felt an obligation to live for two. Like that encouraged him to go big, or to, you know what I mean? Like he felt like, I've heard that. I'm living for two.
I've heard that the twins, even when they lose their twins, like at birth or, early.
This was early for him. Early, yeah.
If they didn't even know them, sometimes they feel this intense connection.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know he was a twin. That's great.
Did Will give you feedback about, oh, no, it didn't happen that way? Or remember, what about this? Or did he remind you of things around the story?
I'm trying to think if he did or not. He, mostly no. I mean, he's been very accepting about some of the stuff that's a little harder for him because he has we don't need to mess with this much, but he does have a relationship with his dads.
Right.
And, so
right.
We've had talks about that, but he's been stellar in that he knows, I know that his experience is not mine.
Right.
And that mine is not his.
Right.
Even though they commingle here and there, I have a different experience of those people than he does. And I know that he has a loving, different experience.
Right.
So,
and you can accept that. Yeah. You kind of
it's harder.
You tell the story of how that unfolded with the dads and how that it was difficult.
It was ugly.
It was ugly and difficult. And you use the expression with restraint of pen and tongue describing all of that stuff. And I was like, okay, I got you. What have the reactions been like so far? People in your life or strangers? I know it's just opened recently.
Just opened. We did have this workshop at the Fountain last year, and it was overwhelming at that time. We had 3 shows, and it wasn't. I mean, it's much better now. I've edited carefully rather than just having to, like, we had to edit at the last minute at the Fountain and cut a whole bunch out just because all of a sudden it was too long. So we just did, open heart surgery and bam. But this time I took, I was working on the script again for months, cutting things very judiciously so that I could add some things back in so that it would still be a tight show and under 85 minutes. So this time, last time I got really, really positive, always very emotional, always very heartfelt.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, look, Dennis, the reason, aside from honoring Nora and wanting to keep her alive in the world in the only ways that we can, Pat has a foundation that's driver safety and is doing great work.
Right.
That's what she does. Cause she's an entrepreneur and she's a business owner and that's her channel and it's fabulous. My channel, the only thing I know how to do is to do some kind of art. So that's what I made. And so, the thing I want, really truly, I question this and think, are you just being like, but I really do want for this to mean something about anybody's loss.
Yeah.
Because yes, this is the one nobody can imagine. This is it absolutely is. But loss is loss. Right. And anytime we have a significant one, I think it tears us down and puts us in a heap on the ground, and even young people, even in their early 20s or teens or whatever, many times have suffered losses. Yeah. And we all have to say, okay, wait, there's an arm there. That's not an ankle. There's a, I mean, we have to like reassemble ourselves like some Picasso drawing and figure out how to go on.
How to keep going. Because I think given what you experienced, I mean, going on at all would be a challenge. But then doing something like this, mounting something like this, I was very inspired by it. Like, you can do stuff.
Yes, I really love making things up and making things happen. That's marvelous.
Yeah, I like to support creative people and the journey of it and how hard it is, and it's still worth it. I want to talk about something else that I felt watching your piece. I just turned 60 this year, and a lot of thank you, and a lot of my friends are around the same age, and the phone rings less, and it's like, and I don't take it personally, but I see it around me, and it's like the world saying, we don't need anything else from you. And I saw your show, and I'm like, you can still do shit. You can still do big things.
There's a lot of ageism.
Ambitious things.
Yeah, there's a lot of ageism out there. And you just, I mean, there's some things out there that I think are really wonderful and important. Like, shout out to Julia Louis-Dreyfus and her Wiser Than Me podcast, where she gets these old broads on, and talks to them.
Yeah.
Just all of them, like Carol Burnett and Bonnie Raitt, and, like, it's crazy. And they're in their 80s and their 90s, and they're, and I can't remember who it was, whether it was Debbie Allen or somebody like that, when she said, like, what is it like to be your age? She asks all about kind of like, what's your journey? And I can't remember who it was, but one of them said, it's like nothing. It's just, I'm who I am. Like, I'm not this age that I am. Right. I'm just me. I mean, you're just you.
Right.
60-year-old. No, Dennis is just Dennis. Right. I'm just me. And the less that I think, I mean, I say it in my show because it fits and it's important.
Right. You say it near the end. Like
I say it near the end, and it's important, I think, for the journey that we took, where we didn't even, I didn't even become a parent till my life was half over. How crazy, right? And so I think it's an kind of an important part of the story, but basically I don't really think like I'm old. That just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, you're not having it.
I'm not having it.
No, I'm not having
it. I've had 4 surgeries in 3 years.
Right.
Because my body's, but not, I don't think so much because I'm old, as after Nora, my body basically revolted and said, fuck this.
Yeah.
We're not interested. We're taking a hike.
Right.
And first the hips went, and then the shoulder fell apart. And
of course.
Right. Yeah. My heart, all this stuff. And I had to realize that my body was having this revolt.
Right.
And after several years, I kind of said, no, we're not done. I mean, I'm not done.
Yeah. But also to do it in the way that you've done it. Like, it's really ambitious. I'm going to have musicians on stage with me. It's all going to be off book. Like, you could have done I'm going to read a thing, and then, you know what I mean? It's a big swing in the way you undertook it.
It's a big swing.
Even looking at the script that they sent me, because I wanted to refresh, it's beautifully professional. I'm inspired by it.
Well, believe me, can I just say that there are moments, and I said this to my wonderful sound guy, Benjamin, and to somebody else that was in the room with me, the first or the second preview, something like that. This is the moment where I say to myself, what the fuck were you thinking?
Right.
Right. And that has come up many times. Like, what the fuck were you thinking?
Right.
And I don't know, except that I just knew. And I just knew, and I still know, that I'm supposed to be doing this.
I think it's beautiful in that way. You write about the Joni Mitchell 75th birthday celebration.
Yeah.
What do you make of the current Joni Renaissance with her performing? And I was thinking about that, like she's since come out on stage and doing things. What do you make of it?
80-something years. What I make of it is kind of like, thanks, Joni. Thank you for this little platter you've handed me because of my, here's my show that opens with this. And I must say, Ann Kenny, who is full circle, what a wonderful thing, my dramaturg in 2019, when I first started working on it, I hired Anne to be my dramaturg. I had met her through friends.
Right.
And she walked me through almost every day of 2019. And I never would have had a first draft if it wasn't for her. She was the person who said, I'd written all these pieces. We were trying to figure out how they all fit together before I had all the music, before I'd met Aaron, who helped me make the score. And she was the first person that said, you should start with Joni's concert, because I had written a piece about that concert. It had been so monumental for me. And then the fact that Borderline had happened right afterwards.
Right.
I wrote a little piece, a little micro thing about that before even Nora's accident. I'd written it right after the concert.
Now, Borderline, to refresh the memory of people listening, it was at the shooting at the...
Yes,
right.
There were a dozen kids.
At a bar in Thousand Oaks. And your kids...
It was a bar, and when I called Nora, and the extended conversation with her was that she'd gone to that bar more than once.
Had been there, yeah. She knows
She'd been there.
Yeah.
She knew it, and she was madly calling all her friends to make sure that she didn't have any friends that were there. And actually, it wasn't a good friend of either one of theirs, but Will did know a kid.
Yeah.
That was killed.
Yeah.
So how crazy, and they went to Chaminade High School, which is right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like,
I'm not a parent. I've never burned with that desire. I'm not like never, but there's parts of your show that really I kind of got a sense of what it's like the ups and downs. And like you write this one point about your son, Will. When did Will become a dick? When did I? Like, I think there are those moments where like, what's happening to us? Like, and then you just keep going, right?
Right. But yeah, because.
And then there was that period where Nora was like not having it. And
no, she was not having it with me. She was blaming me for everything. I was a scapegoat. There's these, when they're little and up until, I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but up until, we were very close and with them all the time. And, they were raised by the guys but more by the two women. So there was a lot of closeness that stayed for a long time. So it wasn't really until they hit maybe middle school.
Right.
And then suddenly it's like, who is this creature, who is like being all snarky and doesn't want to hug you and just like, yeah. And it's like, wait, what happened?
What happened? Yeah. Did you happen to see the movie Inside Out 2, the second one?
I haven't, but
it's about that period of time where...
Oh, it is?
It's about puberty and what happens. And I thought it was so... It wasn't something I saw right away. I was just... I had an opportunity to go to a screening with the Q&A, and I was really struck by how psychologically astute it was and what the messages of it to families all over the world. Like it's quite deep, and it's about that
now
period.
I'm going to have to run out.
Yeah, no, it's about that period where puberty hits and anxiety comes in, and all of that stuff that wasn't really part of the early years comes home. And
I didn't realize it was. I've seen trailers and
I just was like, wow, this is.
I knew
stuff.
It was more about like the deep, like angsty, but I didn't realize it was like a moment in time, which is really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. It's really good. I was very moved by your whole show, but there was one period where I really cried hard. And do you know what it is? After the loss happens, you go to your rehab community.
Oh yeah.
And can you just talk a little about that moment? I like friendship stories are my jam. I think they're my primary relationships in my life. Mm-hmm. So things related to friendship, boom, right there. So if you could talk a little bit about that moment, because it was the moment when I think I really got the most emotional.
There were a couple of things that happened kind of back to back. And they involved in some cases, like some of the same people, like when, literally the thing that happened before that included a lot of those same people, was as she was in the coma for 4 days. And, you know, I had my sober sisters coming to the ER door with bags of stuff for me and for the family.
Right.
You know, I had my friend Lori arrive, who had known Nora and was close to her. Nora camp counseled her, coming to the hospital with a bag full of bagels. I mean, you know, people just surrounded us. The school that they went to, you know, the progressive school, but also I have been going, you know, for many, many years to what we call my home meeting, you know, which is every Saturday, and it's gotten to be very big. There's like 60 women,
right?
There's sober women that pile into this meeting, and many of them are still there, which is really a killer for me, because I mean, there were I've had a few just in one of the previews and the 2 nights that we've opened so far. There's been 6 of them already, 7, 8 already coming to the show just in our first few shows, where a couple of the people I name in the show are in the audience.
Wow.
The thing that happened first was that I didn't, you know, I was too in shock to really notice. But then after, in the days after, I saw online, and in text, emails, and online, like everywhere I looked, there were people telling me about how they were lighting candles for her. Everywhere I looked, there were pictures of candles.
Wow.
We've lit this candle. We lit a candle. All of us got together and we lit all our candles, everywhere. People lighting candles, like all the communities that surrounded us, that knew her, that knew Will, that knew me, my sober sister, the schools, all of their friends. You know, you know what happens. You know, it snakes out into all sorts of groups, right? So first that happened, and I was like,
right.
You know,
and you write about that in the show.
I write about that in the show, because I, you know, even in the midst of this shock and horror, I very early on saw it like a runway, you know,
with the lights along the side.
A runway lighting her way, you know, and then, you know, like it was a Thursday that we turned off the machines, and that Saturday was my first meeting.
Wow, that close. Yeah.
That close. And I was a mess, you know, but I was a sober woman, and
you showed up.
Know, and my sponsor picked me up, and she is still today my sponsor. And she brought me into that meeting, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. You know, even I think for me, and I think a lot of people, even when you think you're okay, when you go to a meeting, it's a safe place, and you think you're fine, then you walk into the meeting and you go, you know, because it's safe. And so all the stuff comes up. So I couldn't control myself, to be honest. I was, you know, I was audibly weeping and rocking back and forth. God knows what I was. And she took me outside, and I literally, I do remember that it was Greek, you know, I fell on my knee. She grabbed me as I started to fall on my knees, and I just was like, what? You know, and just screaming. And my closest friends first came outside, and they, you know, held me, and then more and more and more. And I've had this by a friend of mine, one of my dearest friends, Hank, who is in Canada now, just wrote to me and said, I remember that. I remember it still. That literally pretty much every woman in that meeting just said, fuck this. And they just came outside, and it was like circles of women. So, you know, like just, you know, like a pinwheel of people.
Yeah. Showing
just
up for you.
Holding on to me. And all, of course, I mean, I'm crying, you know, as I tell you about it.
Yeah. And so am I.
Yeah. Yeah. Just all of them crying with me. And the extraordinary thing, Dennis, is that some of those women, many of them are still in that meeting, and many of them came to see the workshop and are already coming to the show. I mean, How crazy is that?
It's wonderful. And the way you write about it, the way it unfolds, it's very beautifully written. It almost feels like a movie moment. Like, you know, the moment at the end of the movie where one person stands up and like it has that kind of emotional heft. How do you get through the show without getting too emotional? How do you say the next line?
You know, I've talked to Anne. I've talked to my director, Anne, about this, and other people too. I don't know, except because there have been times, like as I've written it, I've sobbed through writing it, through many, many drafts, even after even 2 months ago. You know, I mean, time. There's not a time. Time does not exist with something like this. And I've almost lost it in rehearsals. And when I was working with the wonderful Aaron, who is my musical director and built this score with me, he's the other person, bookends besides Anne at the beginning, and then Aaron 3 years later, who I would not have this show without. I mean, just would not. There were times when I was bringing things into him, like the song Perfect about Give Her Back, where I brought a piece of it in and then we were kind of building it. And I refer to this and we both kind of nod that by the end of the session where we were building that piece of it, I was sobbing on the floor at his place with, him on the piano going, I think this is right.
This is a productive work session.
This works, know, and I'm like, yes, it works, So I, even in rehearsals, but, maybe it was playing Heidi at 11. I don't know. I've done this. I've been a performer all my life. And I think there's just some synergy. Right. Maybe. I have to tell you, you can tell in the way I'm saying it. I actually don't know. Right. I just, that for whatever reason, from the first readings forward, but anytime that I'm giving it out and telling people, which is, I think, the transformative thing is to give it, that I'm able to do it.
Yeah. The title, Unconditional, where did that come from?
It's the one thing I think many of us feel that we get unconditional love from our pets. And I think that's kind of true. Right. But the one thing that, and it doesn't even mean that your parents won't betray you or your kids won't betray you or anything, but it's the one thing where, I knew my mom as many problems as she had, loved me unconditionally. Yeah. And I always knew that I loved them, our kids unconditionally. And I think the secret for me was that I didn't know until it happened to me that it's not a burden. It's like such a gift to be able in your life and doesn't, know whatever's to somebody that chooses not to do it because you find your own ways of being committed, of course. But for me, I was meant to be mom, but for me, the experience of giving unconditional love was like the best, you know? There's something so whole about it.
Yeah. And you write about that moment when they don't need you as much anymore. When you're like, when somebody says, I need a ride to the airport, and you're like, I'll gladly be your chauffeur. Where you shouldn't be so like nakedly, yes, of course I'll be there, but you will like anything to have more time with the kids and you want them to call more. And like, that really came across vividly. There was something you write near the end and I thought this was resonant. You talk about like, you use the expression, get the fuck over it. Sort of like, you're not going to be a martyr. You're not going to be like sort of like, move on or get out, keep going, right? Like talk about that idea a little bit.
Well, I just think that, Nora was at the same time that she was an artist with an artist's heart, loved animals, loved children, had a way with them. at the same time, she was a hard ass, and she just didn't, by the time she got to be a teenager and really was claiming herself,
right,
which she did, and just like more and more, she just wasn't having it. She was just didn't suffer fools. And I feel like that's something that I'm not always good at.
Right.
Because, I'm a drama kid, and I'm a, and,
right.
And I've got all that stuff.
Right.
So I think that for this thing, and for my son, and for her memory, that no matter that you can, my friend Hank says this too, you can hold the dark and the light.
Right.
We hold the dark and the light. I will never heal. I will be sad. I will cry about her, for the rest of my life. I will never, ever feel okay about it. And I will go on and not waste what I have. I mean, the song, Don't Forget You're in the World, is the last song that I wrote, because it was like 3 years after I'd been working on this. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, I'm lucky to wake up in the morning.
I'm still here.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
I have things to do, and I have to just do it.
Right. Yeah.
And and I think when you have loss, or you have all sorts of neurodivergent shit going on, which I do, and which so many of us do, we forget that it's all about action.
Yeah.
It's all about doing it.
Right.
That you can feel all the horrible shit, but that's okay. That's fine. Feel it, but just keep moving.
Do shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been fun about it? Working with the other people? What's the fun part?
Oh, God. I love singing my songs. I love singing them about these kids.
Yeah.
I love it. I just love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love, because Aaron did such a beautiful job with the arrangements.
Yeah.
I love hearing it.
Yeah.
I love being able to, it's a lot of work, obviously, even now that it's done. It's kind of to get through it, but right. I love telling this story, Dennis.
That's awesome. I was looking at the art for it. It's a tree, and then there's 4 figures, but I think you're all 4, right?
Yes, I'm all 4. This was Will's idea with his friend, is it Eric? I've forgotten his name already. He's this, Zach,
yeah.
Zach, who is out there, only works with, no digital, all camera, all film and camera.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he's all old school. And Will, from the very beginning, was like, I want you to get your photo session with this guy, and we'll have this thing. And we went through this big thing about whether there'd be disembodied heads. And I was like, no disembodied heads. I'm not going to hold my own head. It became a joke with my director and I. But, because it was all sort of like off the grid kind of art. But at some point or another, they came up with the photographer loves trees to do,
right.
to do, and they came up with this idea of multiple me's.
Yeah.
Through different stages, through different eras of the kids, through different things since then, and multiple me's. One where I'm picking the lemons, and one I'm looking at the kid, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in for that.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did in our session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was preparing for this interview with a couple of friends. We get together and do our own projects, kind of homework day, we call it. And I brought up the opening of your piece where you say, what was the best day of your life? And what was the worst day? And if you don't know it in 5 seconds, you probably haven't had it yet. And so I played that exercise with them, and none of us really were able to go boom, because none of us.
Well, I think it's not necessarily true with the best day.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us feel like, I don't know, that was a pretty good day.
That was a pretty good day. Yeah. No, one of my friends said I've had a lot of good days. His inability to name a day was because he's had too many. It wasn't like, oh, yeah, I never had a great day. Yeah, but I love that exercise, and I love the point that you make that if you can't name it, then you probably haven't had it yet.
With the worst.
Yeah, with the worst.
I think the best, that's not, we wanted to add what was the best only because we didn't want to start out with such a dark cloud.
Right.
Do you know what I wanted to be able to say this and this? But really the first thing I said, and it just popped out of my mouth early on in this process of writing this, I said it to Anne one day. I said, you know, if you haven't, if somebody asks you what was the worst day of your life, if you don't answer them in 5 seconds, you haven't had it.
I think that's profound, and I think that's true. I think that's right.
I kind of think it is.
Yeah.
Worst day? Yeah.
Yeah, like there are things that have happened in my life that were profoundly negative, but they unfolded. Like it wasn't a day. Whereas I think in your experience, there is a moment where something happens that is, you know, boom, that's it. It
defines your life. I mean, Cheryl Strayed, who was, you know, she wrote Wild and a lot of other wonderful things, has been my teacher several summers at Esalen, and she has a thing where she talks about the story you need to tell. And the story you need to tell is when what happens, after that happens, nothing is ever the same.
Right.
It's a little different than if you can't answer in 5 seconds, but it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because she's written a lot about when her mom died when she was only 45 years old and she was a single mother, and it just completely destroyed her world. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And I really, I think the genesis for that thought came from Cheryl and saying, you know, nothing was ever the same.
After that. Yeah. That's a great tool for writers to think that way. Tell people how they can come and see your show. I think I'm going to come see it again. Okay. I have some friends.
Oh, I would love for you to let us know so that we can,
we'll hook it up.
We can get you tickets.
I love it.
Yeah, we'll hook it up. Thank you. That's great. They can, we're all over we're doing a lot of social media. So it's all over the place there, and it's at the Skylight Theatre on Vermont.
And you're set to close when?
March 9th.
March 9th. And there's a website for it.
And there's a website, unconditionalmusical.com, plus which, and this we're trying to publish as much as we can, anybody that was affected by the fires.
Yes.
Anybody who is LGBTQ plus gets in for free.
Love it.
Yes.
I love it. I'm LGBTQ plus. I love that.
Come on. Well, you're getting for free anyway, but yes.
Thank you.
Yes, because, you know, well, first of all, the fires is a no-brainer. And second of all, I think being LGBTQ plus is obviously a part of the show, but also, you know, we're all under fire now.
Yeah. Right. You need some good news in your inbox.
We need some good news.
That's some good news.
Good news in your inbox.
I'm going to look at my list and just throw out a few random little things that I wrote down. You guys, your home was big on the Tooth Fairy. The Tooth Fairy was a big deal in your house. You did it all the way.
I did it all the way. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Were you sneaking into rooms and hiding?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a thing about that Tooth Fairy. I mean, it went beyond. You can't even imagine. I put sealing wax on the back of their little notes, you know, had little envelopes and did sealing wax. I just got into it.
The Tooth Fairy thing. I love it. And Nora loved the Tooth Fairy.
Loved the Tooth Fairy. Will loved the Tooth Fairy too, but he got wise to the Tooth Fairy about a year or two. I think Nora kept believing, like she never stopped. But Will, there's a note that I have from Will that says, "I know what the truth is," that he wrote to the.
He wrote back. He's like, "I've got your number.
I know.
I'll still take whatever the prize is or the reward, but I'm on to you."
Oh my God! I went to the bank and got Sacagawea gold coins. It was. I went a little nuts on it.
There's another image that whenever I see this now, I'm going to think about your show, which is dogs that have lost a limb that have that little. You call it a chariot behind them.
Yeah, chariot. Yeah.
And you write about how they seem okay. They seem to not be bothered. They just get on with it, right?
They just get on with it. I think when it first happens, you know, or they first get put in those little things, they're like, what's going on?
This isn't cool.
You know? Yeah. But then they kind of go, oh, okay, let's go.
Okay.
You know, just go.
Yeah.
And I've never seen one in one of those that isn't just just like
no, you never see them sitting there going, ugh.
No,
they're just going
horrible.
Yeah,
no,
they're just just
accept it.
They just get on with it.
They just get on with it.
I have one more thought, one more question, but first, just congratulations. I think it's really beautiful. I hope a lot of people see it. What has it meant to you in your life to be doing this now, to have it up?
It's a purpose. That's all. Yeah. It's just purpose. I mean, look at you with this wonderful podcast. And
you know what? I think of that. I think of that when I look at the time it takes and like, how much do I get from it? And is it worth it? And should I be finding more lucrative ways to spend my time? I feel purpose when I do this.
Yes. And I had purpose. Now, my son is grown. I mean, I always worry about him, but he's grown. He doesn't need me helping him out all the time now. He's an adult. I have to keep learning how to be an adult with an adult. Right. It's a whole different, but when you're raising kids, that's your purpose. And there's, if you're an artist, you may have other purpose, but that's, the main deal. And I had to find a purpose.
Yeah.
Because I think most people don't do well if they don't have something that is their purpose.
I agree. I think that's great. And I think that it's great that you articulated it. Here's my final question. The question the play is asking is, how can I go on? How do you go on? How do you?
I think it's a question you ask and figure out how to answer every day. That's why I like the idea of just the question of how do I go on, rather than radical resilience and all that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's great. Really. I mean, I love that everybody does that. But for me, it's like, I'm in touch with several women online that I haven't met that have lost their children.
Right.
And we met each other through, being online. And, one that I talk to all the time, and she struggles daily. And I struggle daily in the sense that, there's a part of every day, and you just go, okay, now what do I do? Do I pray? Do I meditate? Do I call a friend? What the fuck do I do?
Right.
And I think it's ongoing. And the only thing I know about it is that we all share it in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Do you know?
Yeah. You talk about the idea of community being important. And I think politically where we are now, I think when we feel so powerless, I think that resonates as well.
I think community is huge. It's huge. We don't know how to go on, and then we ask somebody else, or we look at what somebody else has done to go on. Oh, absolutely. We can't do it by ourselves.
Yeah. Well, Margot, I love this conversation. I love your show. I'm going to come see it again. I'm going to bring some folks. I hope you get to keep doing it. I hope it has a big, long life.
We do too.
The work that comes through, all the artists involved, it's really wonderful. So
yeah, I'm hoping we go on from here, whether it's to a nice little theater in New York, or whether it's wherever it is. Yeah, I don't know. We're working on it.
Yeah,
but thank you. Thank you so much. I love what you do.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it. I'll see you again soon.
Yeah. I will see you soon. Please stay in touch.
Thanks again to Margot Rose. Go see her show, Unconditional. If you're in Los Angeles, you can learn about that at unconditionalmusical.com. All right, so this happens. Speaking of musical nights out, there's this thing in LA and maybe in other parts of the country, I'm not sure. I think they did Vegas for a while, called For the Record. And there are these cool musical review shows where they will do an evening about John Hughes movies with all the music from John Hughes movies. Or the first one I think I saw was Baz Luhrmann, and they mash up all the Baz Luhrmann movies together with the music, and they're fabulous. The caliber of performances are always amazing. They're always like Broadway caliber people, and they've bounced around different venues all over. Well, they're back, and they're showing now, it's the Tarantino show, so it's all music from Tarantino films, and they're showing at this tent down by SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, where the whole world seems to be happening. They've got a million venues there, and it's like this Belgian-style tent with all these mirrors inside it. It has a special name. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's named after the family that builds them. And before the show, the tent guy, the owner of the tent company got up and talked about the tents and how cool they were. And then the show started, and it was just fabulous. It was just great performances, and doing all these cool songs from Tarantino movies in costumes and fighting and guns. And anyway, it was cool. And the venue was cool. And so I'm happy to say that For the Record is back. I think they're doing John Hughes coming up, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, it was a cool night. And some friends and I went. We were able to score a reasonably priced tickets, and my favorite food truck is down there. So I was like, you guys, can we go to my favorite food truck? So it's called El Capitalino MX, and it's Mexico City style street food. And so there are these deep fried quesadillas. And after I went to Mexico City in 2013, I was reading the LA Times, and I saw this little place reviewed. This food truck is like Mexico City style. And I was like, I had some great food down there on the street. So they captured that deliciousness. So yeah, so it was a fun night, and I'm glad For the Record is back. All right, that's enough for this week. I want to thank Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye.